What's up guys, this is Cher talking, welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I want to discuss why we are not updating the tier list for Romancing SaGa Reuniverse anymore, why the new grading system is being used during my reviews, how does it work, and what has been happening behind the scenes. First of all, well, the game has been changing quite a lot, and it has been changing since among December. Remember the release of Jo was very impactful in the game. She has a passive that triggers defenses and attack boosts when anyone in the party is hit. And that was game breaking. Many bosses were designed for you to use Jo in order to decrease damage taken since they were attacking multiple times. And we also got changes made to Liz that made her the best healer and defense booster and even a good BP generator in the game. They were being used in almost all challenges, not just those characters, but also someone that was released a little bit later, and that one was Al Kaiser. He was released and became useful in many different challenges. These three characters kinda started a big shift in the meta alongside Kihachi, but she's a damage dealer and those things are different from damage dealers. Okay, so how did the tier list work it up to this point? Well, we had units that were placed on OP tier or tier 0 if you prefer, and they were the best among their classes. They were the best on the roams, they had either good sustain, healing, support, damage, and it was easy to understand. Network was the best buffer. You needed her other styles to have different buffs. Leon was the best damage dealer, but he took time to load all his bullets. We had good support with Impress, Gustav. We had good buffers that were released after Matrock, and we had good healers, and that was about that. They didn't release characters that were always trying to change the meta. We knew how it worked, and there were side grades here and there. Okay, but this all changed with the release of the sad characters I told you. So they were kind of like a tier above what we were used to, and we could not make another grade above OP. It was very hard to define what was happening. And SaGa, the guy that actually does the tier list, he helped me so much. Without him, the tier list would not even exist. Started having more difficulty since he had a lot of things going on in his real life, so he could not help us much. Everything happening during December alongside many updates, a lot of different content being released, the change in the gameplay, adding the free quest system. Well, it was a lot of things to do. I was doing like 3 to 4 videos a day sometimes. I even started feeling a little burnout with the game, but I was still having fun. I'm still having fun. I still love this. So I took the decision to stop updating the tier list for a while, and I started to understand that it was not working anyway. So I had to start using a new grading system that would make more sense from that point onwards. A lot of people were asking me to make reviews based on grading systems that were just starting from A down to F, or from 0 to 10, from 0 to 5. And from 0 to 5, it does make sense for me, because it's not as big as 0 to 10, because that will actually make it a little more complicated. And I have seen this grading system being used in other gacha games and other people using it, so I said, well, let's try testing this out to see if it works for us. So in some of my reviews I was saying, oh, this character will be graded as OP in my past system and as a 5 out of 5 in my new system. Okay, so people were confused. How do your grading system works now? And why did it change? The reason for the change are the ones I mentioned. The game having too many updates, styles being released that were much better than the past ones, the rise of power creep. Power creep is not really a bad thing. I know that a lot of people will say, okay, Kihachi is such a strong character that she breaks the game. And they are right, she breaks the game. Not on all challenges though. It is nice to have characters that have a very specific role, and they are extremely powerful on doing exactly that, They're like having a special card in your um, hands. But you still need characters that can perform other roles. In the case of Kihachi, she will help you defeat enemies weak to slash, cold, and sometimes lightning. In the case of Alkaiser, he is a support unit that will work in all scenarios because he can give you defense boosts, he can heal, and he decreases shadow damage, and can even give you evasion. In the case of Matrak, she is the best buffer around, and she will be very useful as a healer as well. So, right now, how do you decide what you need? It's based on the content that you are facing. For example, many fights have different rules. In spiral challenges, we have, for example, one fight where the enemy allow you to buff, but the enemy will be debuffing you as well. So, you can keep buffing to outshine the debuffs applied, or you can remove the debuffs applied to yourself. And that is a skill that you cannot find in many characters. For example, there is Sirius, a character that can remove debuffs applied to the team, and he's the best one on doing this. There is also another character, Razen. Razen is feeling old now in his beast form, but when he uses Relief Zone, he will then remove debuffs applied to allies. So you have to start your party thinking about what you need in a fight. Many bosses now will apply the 5 weaknesses or use any type of skill or passive that will remove debuffs applied by the end of turn. They may sometimes check if you debuffed them too much, and also use the 5 weakness to stop you from breaking the system, because it reached a point where you could break the game if we used some exploitations. How? For example, look on this character, Paulus. Paulus is game breaking somehow, because besides being a debuffer, and in global he's better, he can, for example, debuff 20% dexterity, 20% agility, or even he can choose a different skill that will debuff 20% STR and 20% ST intelligence. And he can even chase with this skill again, but debuff 15%. Okay, and he can chase with this other one here as well, again. So he can debuff so much. He also allows all of your characters to debuff up to 10% by their attacks via use of that impair measure passive. So they need to have at least one chase attack in order to debuff twice. But imagine a scenario where you bring Paulus, other debuffers, and, well, you just debuff the enemy status to 0. How will you receive damage? Because you can reapply debuffs every new turn, and they have decay, of course. They have 100% on turn 1. The next turn, they have only 75% of their power, then 50, then 25%, and then 0. But with so many debuffs, the enemy will reach 0 status, and they won't pose a problem. And that's why the game had to make changes to how they place rules on the challenge. Now, the enemy will use the 5 weakness or some other methods of removing debuffs by the end of turn. Paulus is still very strong because you can get very high debuffs with him alone. But sometimes if you debuff too much, for example, higher than a 50% debuff, the enemy may have an action that can be the second, the third action, where it will cleanse the debuffs using the 5 weakness and then start attacking you on full potential. And that can lead to disaster. You may lose the fight because of that. And then some types of buffs are very important. Those that started being very important with Liz. Defense boost, because those cannot be removed. The game says that they stack as well. Okay, so the use of Dragon's Blessing changed a lot. You will decrease damage taken by 25%, and you can stack this 4 times if you have external BP generation. A single character decreasing damage taken 4 times by 25% multiplicatively is still very good. She can also heal, place Eden Order's defensive boosts passively, and give BP generation, so she was also game-changing. Things that were not happening last year, before the release of these units, started appearing, like bosses that will increase your BP cost as well, so that you needed to bring BP generations, and we had people like Sheree, and then after Sheree, we got the release now of Candy, that can also decrease, well, the difficulty of using skills with high cost, and then hardy. So, depending on the fight, if an enemy will cast you a BP increase, bring characters that can generate BP or decrease the BP cost. We don't have many ones with the decreased BP cost yet, but they will start appearing. The game will create new rules so that you can find new characters to use. And that's okay, because you just don't have anywhere else to go. If they release a character that is broken and it's used everywhere, well, then the game becomes boring. And it was becoming boring, in my opinion, in the era of Matriarch. Remember when Matriarch was the sole buffer in the game? You were running Matriarch number 4 with a usage of that Paean of Protection and also Paean of Peace, allowing you to heal, evade, buff Dexterity and Will, and bring Leon as your damage dealer. And you always started a fight with those two together, and many of the times you would win, because the enemy was never prepared. Even if Leon was not landing weak attacks, you would win. So, now you have to enter a fight, check what the enemy does. You will never know fully the behavior because some things are hidden behind the game system. But you can try and see what is happening. For example, a boss can attack you multiple times on turn 8 onwards. So you need characters that have passives that scale well, or if you can cast 4 defensive buffs and prepare for those situations, right? And that is why it became so hard to say this character is better than the another, because they have different usage and they can also perform many different roles. Okay, so Hardy is a better tank than Shirei, but he is not always better than Shirei, because Shirei will give you 15% damage decrease for all types of damage, while Hardy will decrease 30% indirect damage only. And Hardy likes to play with RNG to give EP. The average value is higher than Shirei, but sometimes you may not want to play with RNG. So, can I say that Hardy is better than Shirei? I cannot. I can say that they are both good and actually side grades of each other. Right now, we have a lot of side grades, and you can decide if you want to use one or the another. Sometimes it's better to just summon for the general usage character like Shirei, but getting a secondary alternative will also be nice. So right now what I want to say is many characters are on the top of the game, and when looking back I can say which characters I would consider 5 out of 5 and explain the reasons why. For example, we have Kihachi. Like I said, she's a monster damage dealer. She can make challenges super easy. She can break the game, but not all time. So she deserves a 5 out of 5. I believe she's a must-have. And the other damage dealer is Tatiana. Full-time damage dealer that can attack 13 times in the third. Is not that good enough for you? Well, that's insane. And she outshines Leon. The character was the best damage dealer for Blunt. And then we have characters that are the top of their roles, like Matriarch, that is still the best buffer in the game. She buffs with a fast skill now, so she buffs Endurance and Will for both physical and magical, and STR and Intelligence. Those are the most common offensive status for many characters. And she allows you to buff as well when people are attacking. So that's really awesome. And they can trigger that 2 times. She can also revive, recover, and buff on the same time. And this skill can even be recharged. So that's the reason why I believe she's such a good character. There is another one, Jo. Like I said, she decreases damage taken the more you get hit. And that is still game changing. You can see, for example, fights on Spiral where they have minions and they attack like 10 times in a turn. Jo decreases damage by each new hit and allow you to survive. And besides Jo, Alkaiser, another very important unit in the game, because he can decrease damage taken from shadow attacks. He can attack well just like Jo, and he has this glory force where he gives a guard up that decreases damage taken by 50%. He gives 1 evasion, increases damage. He can use this 2 times and then he charges every 5 turns. And he heals damage, heals a little, applies defense boosts, sometimes can stack if you have extra regeneration, so he's another character that can be used in many different squads. And the other one being Julian. I believe those are still the characters that deserve a 5 out of 5 as they change the meta. Julian counters, he gives STR buffs when he's hit. He also gives a lot of defense boosts to himself, so he is very unkillable. So, very useful because of the best taunt in the game as well, where he is already ready from turn 1 onwards. I'm not so sure about other units belonging to the 5 out of 5 that I must say are must-haves. But there are plenty of units that are also on the top of the game, but you can still clear content without them, and I believe they deserve to be here. But some who are, for example, the Esper Gal is still deserving a perfect score. I believe that it may be right. Let's say here on the comment section, since I didn't grade her using the new system yet, I'm not entirely sure. Esper seems to have low agility for current game, and she has still the best debuff skill that can be used for all status. Well, that comes from her Halloween style, and the skill is Witch Trick, and she debuffs 15% for all status and removes buffs. If an enemy uses buffs, you usually start with Aspergal as your main character. I believe that right now, I will say it's a 4.5 out of 5 because many other characters have very good potential and they are also on similar value. For example, the newest rock bouquet, I don't think that she deserves a 5 out of 5, but she's very good. She has low status, as you can think, for Dex Retaining Intelligence, but she buffs the party damage. She allows people to increase their damage output via buffing, as they can buff themselves 3 times 20% when landing attacks. People with chains attacks will love this if the fight allows you to buff. If a fight doesn't allow you to buff, then she still helps by giving you attack boosts, because when she uses Captive Thunder, she casts Crazy Love, and Crazy Love gives you a 10% attack boost when you attack the enemy that has it. And then we have many other characters that can be used as support, and they are on top of the game. Like Gerard. Gerard has a lot of defense ups. He gives you 5. He then gives you attacks and defense boosts via the supportive poster that he can give 6 different effects, and he can replace Liz many times. And the other character that was support on the top of the game was Anya, and she's still useful if you can buff. If you don't, you can just use another character, but she can keep up to 3 defense boosts and she still buffs the party. And there is even a time where you can cast the Monolith down, and you have, for example, 3 defense boosts, 1 Monolith down, or 4 defense boosts if you can give her a lot of BP, but 9 BP is a little too much. He also heals by the end of a turn, removes debuffs to 4 different status, a very useful style. And like I said, Paulus is one as well. I believe Xiao is another character that should be considered important one, because she is the best AoE debuffer in the game. Well, sometimes you don't need AoE, but even on single target she works super well. The other character that rivals Joe is Hilda, but I'm not so sure if Hilda will be a 5 out of 5 because Hilda needs to be attacked, not anyone in the party. That means that it's a little harder to use her, but since the effects are amazing, well, it's still okay. People like Hardy, like I said, Sheree and Candy are all BP generators on the top of the game. So they are meta units, as you can see when I say here on the top. And then we have other units that are good, but they have some flaws. For example, Beauty. I like Beauty. She has a good support skill, where she gives attack boost, defense boost, and ailment resistance, but they don't last for too long. Hence why she has some problems. She's not as good as the other units that can stack so many effects. Rosenis is still good, but he has BP generation problems. And I can say that both versions of him deserves the same grading. This Rosenis is strong, but he has BP generation, depending on other people being attacked. So if the enemy has AoE, nice. If he has single target, sometimes it doesn't generate as much. His Resin is not as strong as he was before, but he is still a good buffer. And sometimes he brings problems by debuffing the enemy too much. He can be used as a healer, and he is at least better than many other healers that we used in the past that I don't consider them to be so good anymore. For example, I consider Mirza and Polka to be a 3.5 out of 5. Why? Because they just do that now. They do have good damage, but enemies have too much HP now. So you need higher than that. And they have good healings for every 2 turns or every 3 turns, sometimes every turn if you have enough EP generation, but Liz just replaced them entirely. And now other characters can replace them as well. Like even Darius. Darius can be your main healer, and he gives you defense boosts as well. So that's why he's so good. So he is a meta unit where you don't want to use the old ones. Now for some characters that deserve 4 out of 5. Okay, I could say, for example, Urpina. Urpina has good damage, but only for 10 turns, much like Summer Lian. Summer Lian does a little more damage, but Urpina can use it together with Kihachi, so you see a lot of potential there. I also believe that Asilus to be 4 out of 5, because she can buff. She's a very versatile character, but she only has 3 OP. And even then, she has very low agility to be a buffer. So there are some problems, much like Princess White Rose, that has some flaws. He's a good buffer, but a very low agility. And if you don't buff before the enemy attacks you, that's a problem. And in the end, also another important aspect of this whole situation is units will get outclassed super fast, especially if they are damage dealers. And I will try to give the grade that resolves around knowing the value of the character, or the current meta, and the longevity that can be predicted. So sometimes I may feel like, oh, this unit deserves it better. He's now the best damage dealer for this type, but it will be short-lived. So multiple times you find more utility in someone that has a little less damage, but can give you party support. Those units will stay relevant for much longer time when compared to pure damage dealers or characters that just can perform a single or double role, for example. I believe that this grading system can work, but I want to hear your opinions. Say in the comment section based on the characters that I'm pointing here on the top, if you agree with them or if you don't, if you understand what I'm meaning when I'm talking about this topic, and if it's okay for you to keep watching the videos based on all of this information. But guys, as always, this is just my opinion. I want to hear yours, and if you want to support the channel, this month we are making 5 years anniversary, so use the links on the description. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon on the next video or live stream. Goodbye.